Hello everyone, I'm C. Ashish Sarna on behalf of GM Test Series, and today we are going to discuss the mistakes student commit in income tax. Let's start with the test series. Question number one. If an Indian company has entered into an advanced pricing agreement in respect of international transaction with Associated Enterprises for the previous year 1920, the company decides to make an application for rollback of the said APA. However, rollback provision shall not be available in respect of the transaction for the rollback year if rollback provision is something which helps to calculate the arm length prices. If it's a complete theoretical question, so the options are such application has effect of reducing. Okay, yes. Determine the arm length price of a set transaction for the said year has been subjected to the appeal, and CIT appeals has passed an order disposing such appeal at the time before signing of agreement. Determining determination of the arm length prices of said transaction for the said year has been the subject matter of appeal before appellate tribunal, and appellate tribunal has passed an order disposing such appeal at the time of signing of the agreement. Return of income for the relevant rollback year has been furnished. So we have to find the most appropriate answer. So it's a complete theoretical question which requires no general, which requires only logical reasoning, for which the we have to find the most appropriate answer, which will be one. So if it is a effect of reducing the total income, so it will not be applied. And also, if it is pending before appellate tribunal, then also it will not be applied. If the return has already been furnished under section 190, 139(4), then also rollback provision will not be applicable. So the answer is 1, 3, and 4. Question 2. An Akhilesh Nodar is an Indian enthusiastic sports person and is keen on contributing an article on a game of hockey in a leading newspaper in India. He approaches to inquire about the taxability. As per the provision of income tax, as such income shall be taxable at. So he approaches for the taxability for his income to be earned in India. So these are normal slab rates only. There's nothing speciality for the business income to be taxed at the special rate. If it comes to India, normal rate will be applied. He will be liable to file a return for that. So normal rate will be applied. Samrat, resident in India, has earned an income of rupees 4 lakh by way of lump sum consideration for copyright of a book, being a work of literary from a publisher in country E, with which India does not have a DTA. The same has to be taxed at a flat rate 5% in country E. In India, his gross total income is rupees 7 lakh. The double taxation relief would be, and we have the four options. First of all, whenever DTA questions come, then we have to keep in mind that the deduction will be under section 91, and the deduction shall be lower of average tax rate in India or foreign tax rate, whichever is lower. So for calculating the average Indian tax rate, we have to calculate total income in India and the tax to be paid in India. And then we will calculate the flat tax rate to be calculated. That is given to us, that is 5%, which will be for that we have to calculate the total foreign income. So the lower all will be allowed a deduction. So first of all, gross total income in India is 7 lakh. We have to keep that in mind whenever questions come. We have to see whether in these cases, as per the facts of the case, whether a deduction is allowed or not. In this case, we have copyrights of a book, consideration saved for a copyright of a book, for which a deduction under section 80 QQB is allowed for the amount of rupees 3 lakhs, to the limit of rupees 3 lakh, or the actual consideration received, whichever is lower. So in this case, the actual consideration received is 4 lakh, and the deduction will be allowed, that will be 3 lakh. So his gross total income is 7 lakh after considering everything, and then we have to give him the benefit of deduction also for the copyrights consideration received by him to the extent of rupees 3 lakh. 7 lakh minus 3 lakh. So the taxable income in India will be 4 lakh. So for calculating every tax rate, total income is net income. Net income is 4 lakh. Now we have to calculate the tax amount. Tax amount will be 4 lakh minus 2.5 lakh. A deduction will be allowed. On 1.5 lakh, 5% rate will be 500 plus cess that will go around 7800. We are ignoring all the rebates and all. So 7800 divided by 4 lakh, that is 1.95%. That is the average tax rate. Average tax rate is equal to total tax to be paid in India, including cess and surcharge, divided by total net income. Right? So in India, the tax rate is, average tax rate is 1.9%. Foreign income, his foreign income is 4 lakh. Less deduction, obviously deduction has to be allowed to the extent of rupees 3 lakh. 4 lakh minus 3 lakh, that is 1 lakh. So the maximum deduction will be allowed, that will be 1 lakh into 1.95%, that is average tax rate in India, or 1 lakh into 5%, that is 5,000. So the lower will be 1,950 rupees. So the answer is D. Question number 4. An application for advance ruling was made on 31st/5/2019 in relation to a transaction proposed to be undertaken by Mr. Andrew, a resident of Germany. On 7/7/2019, he decides to withdraw the said application. Application can never be withdrawn. Once filed, application may be withdrawn on 7/7/2009 only with the permission of Principal Commission. There is no such requirement. There is nothing such that the application once filed cannot be withdrawn. Application cannot be withdrawn since 30 days from the application has been passed. There is no such condition. So the answer is D only. Okay, application can be withdrawn with the permission of the EAR only if the circumstances of the case so justify. If there is genuine reason, reasonable cause for withdrawing such application, only then it will be allowed. Otherwise, AR will not allow to withdraw such application. But it can be withdrawn with a reasonable cause. It's a completely theoretical question. XYZ Limited has failed to report an international transaction entered by it with PQR which is specified foreign company in relation to XYZ Limited. What would the penalty? 2%, 50%, 200%. So the answer is as simple as that, which is point D. 2% of the value of transaction, 200% of tax payable on underreported income will be levied. Yeah. A notified infrastructure debt fund eligible for exemption under Section 1047 of the Income Tax Act pays interest of rupees 5 lakh to a company incorporated in a foreign country. The foreign company incur expenditure of 12,000 for earning such interest. The funds also pays interest of rupees 3 lakh. Mr. Frank, who is a resident of country A of non-jurisdictional, notified jurisdictional area, which of following statement is correct? No TDS. No, this will not be done. TDS has to be deducted because he is earning. Special provision has been provided by under section 11047, a notified debt fund, in which if a person is earning interest income from notified infrastructure debt fund, then the uh, reduced rate of 5% will be TDS at the rate of reduced rate of 5% will be deducted. So it can be either C or D. TDS at 5% is deducted on rupees 4,88,000 to foreign company. This question is given by section 115D. This section is governed by section 115D, which says that no expenditure shall be allowed for the purpose of deducting TDS. So if a person has incurred expenditure of 12,000, so that will not be allowed because the company is paying interest of 5 lakh. So that is obvious that it will pay interest after deducting TDS on the entire amount. So the answer will be TDS for D point. TDS 5.2% deducted on interest payment of rupees 5 lakh. And for the other part, the fund also pays interest of rupees 3 lakh to Mr. Frank, who is a resident of country A. So debt infrastructure fund is will deduct TDS at 5% if it is a foreign company. So if it is a non-resident person, then it will deduct tax at the maximum marginal rate, that is 31.2%. Next question. In October 2014, Mr. Raghav, an Indian citizen who is a non-resident, bought 500 global deposit receipts of Alpha Limited (GDR), issued in accordance with the notified scheme of central government against the company's initial issue of share in foreign currency. In Jan 2020, so they were purchased in 2014. In Jan 2020, he sold 300 GDS outside India to Mr. Joe, a citizen and resident of country outside India, 200 GDS to Mr. Kamala, resident but not ordinary resident in India. What are the tax consequences of such transaction under Income Tax Act? First of all, this section is governed by Section 115 ACA. This section says that in case of sale of GDRs, no indexation benefit will be given in case there is capital gain. First of all, as per the scheme of GDR, if it is sold outside India to a person outside India, then there won't be any capital gains. But if it is sold to a person who's a resident, a non-resident, or a resident person, then it shall be taxable in the under the head capital gains. As the case may be, it will be either short term or long term. In case of long term, 10% tax will be levied, capital gain tax will be levied without indexation. So the answer is going to be capital gain on sale of 500 subject to 20%, no. No capital gain or rise, and no. 500 shares because 200 shares has been sold to Indian person also. So, answer will be C. No capital gain would rise on sale of 300 GDS because it is sold outside India to a person who is non-resident and not a citizen of India. And 200 sale, yes, capital gain will be on 200 GDRs because it is sold to a person in India, to a person who is a resident but not ordinary resident at the rate 10% without indexation. It is specially stated in section 115 ACA that no indexation benefit will be given. Mr. Geetha, born in US, came to India for the first time on 1/5/2020 and left on 28/5/2020. She was born and brought up in USA, but her grandparents were born in Karachi before the 1914. 2015, she bought a foreign currency 500 GDRs. Again, a GDR question. An Indian company which were issued in accordance with the notified scheme, okay, against the initial issue of share of rupees PQR in 2019, he sold 300 GDRs to Mr. Frank, a citizen and resident of country X. So this will also be not taxable, and 200 GDRs to Mr. Resident but not ordinary resident to India. Okay, so on 300 there won't be any capital gains. On 200 there will be capital gains at the rate 10%, and no indexation benefit shall be given. So answer is again C. A bench of authority for advance ruling consists of a chairman, vice chairman, one revenue member, one law member. Application filed an application before NSSC filed an application before the AR pertaining to interpretation of certain provisions. Whether he can be a member, a person who is a person from Indian Revenue Service who is qualified to be a member of CBDT shall be a person who can be a member of AAR. So the answer is as simple as that: a person from Indian Revenue Services who is qualified to be a member of CBDT. The answer is A. The person from Indian Revenue Services who is qualified to be a member of CBDT. So it's a completely theoretical question. Yeah, Mr. Rajesh, a resident Indian, is an employee of ABC Bangalore. In addition to salary income from Mr. ABC Limited, he also earns interest on fixed deposits. So he has salary income and he has fixed deposit income. Interest, other source income. Mr. Piquar, a foreign company, does not have a permanent establishment here. They rented online advertisement services to Mr. Rajesh, for whom Mr. Rajesh made a payment of his 2 lakh. So, whether statement, which of the field statement is correct? Transaction subject to equalization levy, since payment in case a person who's a non-resident provides the services such as online services, online advertisement services. In that case, equalization levy at the rate 6% has to be deducted in case the payment is above 1 lakh. And also a condition is that the company which is providing the services does not have a permanent establishment in India, and the person to whom services is being provided is carrying on some kind of business or profession. In this case, amount is more than 1 lakh. The foreign company does not have a permanent establishment in India. These two conditions are satisfied. But is it for the business, for the purpose of business or profession? No, not at all. Because Mr. Rajesh is an employee of BC Limited, and he's earning income of under its salary and income under head interest from fixed deposit. So the answer will be the transaction is not subject to equalization levy. For this, let me take you to, yeah, chapter 8 of the financial terms of the equalization levy provides the equalization levy of 6% of the amount consideration for specified services received by a non-resident not having permanent establishment in India from a resident in India who carries out profession or business, or from a non-resident having permanent establishment in India. So specified services means online advertisement, any provision for digital advertisement space. However, equalization levy shall not be levied where a non-resident provides the services having permanent establishment in India. In that case, nothing will be charged, and specified services is effectively connected with sub-permanent services. So, if a non-resident who is providing the services has an establishment in India, then equalization levy will not be levied. Aggregate amount is more than 1 lakh. Okay, when the specified service, where the specified service is not for the purpose of carrying out business and profession. In this case, nothing has been mentioned that it is for the purpose of business or profession, and also it is clear from the fact that Mr. Rajesh is earning only salary income and interest from fixed deposit. In case he was having any business income, then we would have presumed that it was for the purpose of business only. So nothing will be taxable in this. So next question. Mr. Amar Private Limited Bangalore is engaged in IT services. In IT-enabled services, it is subsidiary of ABC, inclusive in India, INC in India, and US. It also provides similar services to a company, SAK Limited in Singapore. It billings and other information is under billing per month to ABC, who is who is a parent company in US, USD $85,000. Billing per month to SAK Limited, a company in Singapore. ABC has provided a loan of USD 1 lakh to Amar Private Limited towards purchase of hardware for executing a project. Rate of interest is 3%. Direct and indirect cost is rupees 100 and $200 per hour respectively. Amar Private Limited works 9 hours for 15 days to execute a project for ABC, and 8 hours for 12 days to execute a project for SAK Limited. Services were provided by the company to both the customer throughout the year. Warranty to SAK Limited for 2 years. Cost is 1%. So we have to calculate the arm's length price for the transaction carried with ABC, INC in US. So the billing with ABC is 85,000. Billing per month to SAK is $70,000. So first of all, we'll calculate the total cost of transaction with and the profit margin with SAK Limited for the purpose. For the, if you're calculating armless price, we have to calculate profit margin to cost percentage. First of all, direct cost with the SAK Limited, 100 USD. Direct cost is 100 into 8 hours into 15 days, 12,000. Indirect cost, then total direct cost and indirect cost is 36,000. Billing per month, 70,000. We can ignore this because we have to calculate the total cost. So 94.4% can be ignored. Total direct and indirect cost 36,000. Cost of warranty is 1% of the direct cost, that is $12,000. So 120. So the total cost is $36,120 billing per month. So the margin is not 70,000, it is 70,000. So the margin is 70,000 minus 36,120. So the margin is 33,880. So profit to cost margin. Cost is 36,120 and the profit is 33,880. 33,880 into 100 divided by 36,120 is equal to 93%, 0.8%. So the profit to margin cost. Now we'll calculate the arm's length price by applying the same cost plus method for the ABC INC in US. Direct cost same way, 1,100 into 9 15, 200 into 9 into 15 total direct cost. And also we had a loan taken from there is 3%. We have to calculate for 1 month is 250. So total cost is 40,750. In the above case, profit was 93.8% of the total cost. So in this case also we'll apply 93.8% of the total cost. This will be the profit and this would be the arm's length billing, the least amount that we should charge. But we are actually charging 85,000. In the present case, since actual billing of USD 85,000 per month to the ABC included and AC is higher than the arm's length price, so no adjustment to be made in the income of Amar Private Limited because it is charging higher amount only. Question number 2. Pranav, a non-resident Indian, age 41, has furnished the following information for the financial year 1920. Loss from house property 2,50,000. As you all know, deduction to the extent of 2 lakh only is allowed, and for the balance amount, it will be allowed to be carried forward. As simple as that. Income from business 7,50,000. It will be deducted from this amount. Income from mutual funds, that is totally exempt. Interest on debentures of Indian company subscribed in US 1,50,000. That will be the income. Interest on loan taken for the above debentures 20,000. This expenditure will not be allowed as per section 115D, I guess so. 115D, which says that no deduction in respect of expenditure in computing the total income from investment shall be allowed. For the subsequent part, it is given long-term capital gain is given purchase of for rupees 5 lakh in 2009-8, sold in 1920, 8 lakh rupees. Indexation is given. Brokerage on sale of such. Okay. Solution is 7,50,000 less 2 lakh. The balance 50,000 will be allowed to be carried forward because as per section 71 3A, it is deducted to 2 lakh only. 5,50,000 business income, capital gain 8 lakh less brokerage expenses. This is the amount less acquisition cost 5 lakh rupees because as per section 115 D and E, which says that no indexation benefit shall be given and the taxation rate will be 10%. Income from mutual fund nil. Interest on debentures, interest income is this. No deduction shall be allowed as because of the 20,000 amount. No deduction shall be allowed because it has been specifically stated in section 115D that no deduction shall be allowed in respect of expenditure allowance while computing the interest on debentures, that is interest on investment. So no deduction shall be allowed. So this amount will be chargeable to tax at the rate 10% as per section 115E, and for the balance amount, tax on interest on debentures being investment income, it is specifically stated in 115E only that 20% will be charged, and for the normal income, slab rate benefit will be given. So this will be the tax amount. Next question. During the previous year 1920, Hindu citizen of India, resident of both India and foreign country, which it has DTA, which provides the income would be taxable in a country where it is earned and not in the other country, but would be included for the computation of tax rate in such other country. Her income is 3,25,000 from business in India and 6 lakh from a business in foreign country. In foreign country, the tax rate is 20%. During the year, she paid a premium of rupees 50,000 to ensure of the health of her mother, non-resident. Very important word, non-resident. A normal deduction, not the higher amount of deduction, shall be allowed because she is not resident. A normal deduction of rupees 25,000 will be allowed, not dependent on her through her credit card. So the payment is not made by cash; it's made by through credit card. Compute the total tax income if there is DTA, and the second part is if there is no DTA. Income from business in India, 3,25,000. Deduction of 25,000 will be allowed because she's a non-resident, and the other income is 6 lakh from outside India. Now we have to calculate tax. For this, first of all, we'll calculate the tax, and then we'll calculate the average tax on the total income earned in India and outside India. And after that, the DTA provisions will apply the tax and the benefit to be given to the SSE as per the DTA norms and the provisions given in the DTA agreement. So tax at 2,50,000 nil, 2 lakh to 5 lakh, it should be 5% only. The calculation is right, but the amount is written 10%. 80,000 for 5 to 9 lakh. So the total tax is 96,200. So if we calculate the average tax, 96,200 divided by 9 lakh will be 10.68%. So as per DTA, it has been given that the income will be taxable in country in which it is earned and not in the other country, but it will be included for the computation of tax rate. So the tax to be paid in India will be 10.68% of rupees 3 lakh only. So this will be the tax amount to be paid. In case there is no DTA, then show the amount of tax payable. So we'll calculate the relief to be given to the assessee. First of all, the tax will be this amount only, and the relief to be given will be lower of 20% because the lower will be of 20% of 6 lakhs or 10% the average rate at which should be taxable. So obviously 10.6889% is lower. So this amount will be the relief given. Otherwise, if this would have been 5%, then 5% of rupees 6 lakhs, the relief would have been something else. But in this case, the flat rate is, or foreign tax rate is 20%, which is higher. So the relief will be of the lower amount. That is the average tax rate. So the amount will be this, and the tax will be the same amount as per the DTA. Next question. A foreign company entered into a contract with several Indian companies for installation of mobile telephone system and made an application to authority for advance ruling on the rate of withholding tax on receipts from Indian companies. One of the Indian companies made an application to the assessing officer for determining the rate. The authority for advance ruling rejected the application of the foreign company on the ground that question has in the application is already pending before the income tax authority. But the application has been made by the Indian company, not by the foreign company. So this is not justified. As per section 245R2, the authority may, after examining the application, the record called either allow or reject. That can do. However, the authority shall not allow the application where the question is already raised and the application is already pending in the case before the income tax authority, ITT, or the court. Non-resident application in this section with regard to non-resident application applicant referred in section 245 and B1, a resident application and a resident application. But the applicant in the present case is foreign company. The case of foreign company is not pending before the ITAT or court or income tax authority, so the application rejected is not justified. And in support, we have a case law also, Ericsson Telephone Corporation India versus CIT of the year 1997 of the advanced. There's an advanced ruling. In this case, we have held that the question raised by the application by a foreign company is not pending in case of foreign company before the ITAT court. The Indian company question has raised the question before the assessing officer, not on behalf applicant's behalf or with the view to benefit the applicant, but only to safeguard its own interest as a statutory duty to deduct a proper amount of tax from payments made to a non-resident. Although the question raised pertain to one of the payments made to the applicant, it is not pending determination before any authority in the applicant's case. Therefore, it will not be proper to reject the application relying on section 245 of the Income Tax Act. ABC Limited, an Indian company, is carrying on business of manufacture and sale of teakwood furniture under brand name Purewood. In order to expand its sale overseas, it launched a massive advertisement campaign of its product for the purpose of online advertisement. It utilizes services of PQR Inc., a London-based company. During the previous year, 1920, ABC paid 5 lakh to PQR for such services to discuss the tax implications. In case PQR has no permanent establishment, in case PQR permanent establishment in India and services effectively connected to the permanent establishment in India. So it's a very nice concept. Yeah. Chapter 6 of Finance Act 2016, Equalization Levy, provides, we'll go word by word. It's a very good concept, a unique concept. Provides an equalization levy at the rate 6% of amount consideration for a specified services received or receivable by a non-resident not having permanent establishment in India from a resident in India who carries out business or profession, or from a non-resident having permanent establishment in India. Specified services, online advertisement, and any provision for digital advertisement space. So advertisement kind of services is being provided by non-resident who does not have permanent establishment in India, and the amount is being paid by a person who is resident in India who carries on business or profession, or from a non-resident having permanent establishment in India. So in this case, but we have few exceptions also, where the amount do not exceed 1 lakh, where the amount do not exceed 1 lakh, where the non-resident providing the services has a permanent establishment in India. And third, where a specified service is not for the purpose of business. Now we have given option. We are given options. PQR has no permanent establishment in India, so in this case, a 6% will be charged on 5 lakh rupees because PQR is non-resident and does not have any PQR permanent establishment in India, and ABC is an Indian company, so 30,000 will be deducted. So in case if it is not deducted, there will be 100% disallowance under section 40A IP. And the next part is covered by the exception, number 1. This, in this case, it has a permanent establishment in India and services connected to the permanent establishment in India, so it will not be attracted. But we have to keep in mind, in case equalization level is not to be charged, but TDS has to be deducted as per rates given under section 195. So in case if that is not deducted, then also there will be 100% disallowance of section 40 AI. What is the difference between monistic view and dualistic view? Friends, it's a theoretical question. And for your kind information, monist view is being followed by India. So Income Tax Act 1961 provides where the Indian company has entered into a DTA which are applicable to a taxpayer, then provision of act shall apply to the extent they are beneficial to the taxpayer. Because this is the kind of system we follow. Because if the DTA provisions are more beneficial to the assessee, then that they will apply. If income tax is beneficial, then that will apply. Internationally, all the situation known as monist view, where international and national laws are part of the same system of law, where DTA overrides domestic law. Some countries which follow such system are Argentina, Italy, Netherlands, Belgium, Brazil. Whereas on the other side, it is dualistic view. International laws and national laws are separate systems, and DTA becomes a part of national legal system by specific incorporation legislation. In a case of dualistic view, DTAs may be subject to the provisions of the national law. India follows monist view because it is a more liberal view, and India being a democracy, it follows monist view. Discuss the provisions incorporated in Income Tax 1961 in line with the OECD recommendation as under Action Plan 4 or BEPS. Again, a theoretical question. Now we all have, we have 6, 7, 8. They all are theoretical questions. The OECD is concerned with multinational groups are able to erode their tax base, that is, reduce the taxable profit with interest expense. For example, location third-party debt in high tax countries, using intra-group loans to achieve interest reduction in excess of the group's actual third-party interest expense, using related party or third-party debt to finance the production or of exempt or deferred income. BPS Section Plan 4 calls for the development of recommendations for the design of domestic rules to prevent tax evasion erosion through the use of interest expense and other financial payments that are economically equivalent to interest. In line with recommendation of AC BPS Plan 4, new Section 94B has been inserted by the Income Tax 1961 to provide a cap on interest payment that can be claimed by the entity to its associated enterprise. The total interest paid in excess of 30% or earning before interest taxes, depreciation, amortization, or interest paid payable to associate for the relevant which is level shall not be deductible. So 30% will be allowed. The provision is applicable to Indian company or permanent establishment of a foreign company being a borrower who pays interest in form of any debt issued by a non-resident who is an associate enterprise of the borrower. Further, the debt is deemed to be treated as issued by associate enterprises where it provides an implicit or explicit guarantee to the lender being non-associated enterprises or deposits the corresponding matching amount of funds with some lender. So this is completely theoretical. If you just give a small slight reading, you'll go and your facts will be clear. When it becomes necessary to apply a tiebreaker, because in case when a person becomes a resident of more than one country, then in that case we need to apply a tiebreaker rule. Discuss the manner in which it will be applied. In which, first of all, we have to see where the home of the person lies. If it's in the both countries, then we have to apply another test. Where his economic and other financial interest lies, and then also if that also fails, then we have to apply one more test. So in subsequent tests, after applying this test, we'll get to know how to apply the DTA provisions. DTA provides a certain income that taxable in the hands of recipient in the country of which he is a resident. Question number 8. When does it become necessary to apply the tiebreaker rule? Discuss the manner of application of tiebreaker rule. So tiebreaker rule is applied when it becomes a resident of one or more than one countries. Then we have to apply a tiebreaker rule so that the detailed provisions can properly be applied. Discuss the manner. First of all, if we need to apply a tiebreaker rule, then first of all we see where the home of the assessee has, where is he residing, and then if that all the tests fail, then we'll see where is economical interest and financial interest is favorable to, whether it's one country or the other country, and so on. The test shall be applied so that detailed provisions can be properly calculated. DTA provides certain income that are taxable in the hand of recipient in the country of which is a resident. Every jurisdiction in its domestic tax law prescribes the mechanism to determine the residential status of a person. If a person is considered to be resident of both the contracting states, a series of tiebreaker rules. So it becomes a resident of both the countries. First, will see a permanent home. Permanent home will be a dwelling place available to him at all times, continuously and not occasionally. It includes a place of taken on rent or for a prolonged period of time. Any place taken for short duration or stay for temporary, there may be reasons such as short business travel is not regarded as permanent home. If that test does not satisfy the conditions, then other test is where his personal and economic relations are closer. Center of vital interest. In case, when then the third point, in case whether SESI has a permanent home available in both the contracting states, and it is possible to determine in which state he is center of vital interest, or where he has no permanent home available to him in both the contracting states. Preference is given to contracting state where the SSE has a habitual abode. If a abode means home, if a individual has a habitual abode in both contracting states and in neither of them, he shall be treated as residing of the contracting state of which he is a national. If an individual is national of both or neither of the contracting states, the matter is left to considered by the competent authorities of the respective contracting states. Thank you.